April 2nd, 2015, 9:21 p.m. Hatton Garden, London. Before I tell you about the most unbelievable heist crew in criminal history, hit that subscribe button right now and smash that notification bell. I bring you the wildest true crime stories every week, and this one involves a gang of elderly men who proved that age is just a number when it comes to pulling off audacious crimes. The Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company sits in the heart of London's Diamond District, serving jewelers, dealers, and collectors who need secure storage for their most valuable assets. Inside the nondescript building, underground vaults contain an estimated hundreds of millions of pounds worth of diamonds, gold, cash, and jewelry. It's the Easter holiday weekend. The building is closed. The streets are quiet. Most of London is celebrating with family. But in the basement of 8890 Hatton Garden, something extraordinary is about to happen. A group of men are breaking into the vault using heavy drilling equipment. But these aren't your typical criminals. They're pensioners. The youngest is 58. The oldest is 76. They're grandfathers with bad knees, hearing aids, and diabetes medication. And they're about to steal $20 million in the biggest burglary in British legal history. This is the story of how a gang of old-school criminals pulled off one last score, and how their combination of old-fashioned expertise and modern stupidity would make them both legendary and captured. The mastermind, if he can be called that, was Brian Reader, a 76-year-old career criminal who had been involved in some of Britain's most notorious robberies over 5 decades. Reader was old school. He'd learned his trade in an era before surveillance, cameras, and DNA evidence, when criminals could disappear into London's underworld and never be found. But Reader had a problem that many elderly criminals face. He was broke. Decades of criminal activity had netted him nothing permanent, because he'd spent everything on living expenses, legal fees, and supporting family. In his mid-70s, he was facing retirement with no pension and no legitimate income. So he did what old criminals do. He called his old crew, Terry Perkins, 67, who'd already served time for the Security Express robbery in 1983. John Collins, 75, a plumber who'd been involved in various criminal enterprises. Danny Jones, 58, the youngest of the group, and several others who brought specific skills to what would become known as the Bad Grandpa's heist. The plan they developed was old-fashioned in approach, but ambitious in scope. They would break into the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company over the Easter weekend, when the building would be closed for 4 days, giving them maximum time to work without interruption. Their method was beautifully simple. Drill through the reinforced concrete vault wall using heavy industrial equipment. Then loot every safe deposit box they could access. No sophisticated electronics. No computer hacking. Just brute force applied with the expertise that comes from decades of criminal experience. Easter weekend, 2015, Thursday night. April 2, ND, the gang entered the building through a communal entrance, hauling heavy equipment including a Hilti DD350 industrial drill weighing over 100 pounds. For men in their 60s and 70s, this was already physically challenging work, but they were committed to one final score that would set them up for comfortable retirement. They rode the elevator to the basement, disabled the alarm system using inside knowledge, possibly provided by an employee, and began the painstaking process of drilling through the vault wall. The concrete was over 50 centimeters thick and reinforced with steel. This wasn't going to be quick or easy. For hours, they took turns drilling. The noise was tremendous. The physical exertion was exhausting for men their age. Reader, the 76-year-old ringleader, had to take frequent breaks for his diabetes and heart condition. Perkins needed his medication. Collins complained about his back, but they persevered, driven by decades of criminal experience and the knowledge that this was likely their last chance at a major score. By Friday morning, they had drilled a hole large enough to climb through. They were in. What they found exceeded their expectations. The vault contained 73 safe deposit boxes, many filled with cash, jewelry, diamonds, and gold that dealers and collectors had stored over the holiday weekend. For the next several hours, they systematically looted box after box, filling bags with millions in valuables. But age was catching up with them. The physical exertion was taking its toll. They decided to leave, rest, and returned Saturday night to continue. T's decision, taking a break in the middle of a burglary, would later strike investigators as bizarrely unprofessional, yet entirely understandable for men in their 70s. Saturday night, they returned and continued looting. By Sunday morning, they'd stolen an estimated 14 million pounds, about 20 million US dollars. It was the largest burglary in British legal history, pulled off by men who collectively had over 200 years of criminal experience. But here's where decades of criminal expertise collided with modern technology in the most spectacular way possible. These old-school criminals had executed a technically brilliant burglary using methods from the 1980s, but they completely failed to understand modern surveillance. Their vehicles were captured on hundreds of CCTV cameras throughout London. Their phones were tracked, showing them meeting before and after the heist. Most incredibly, they were recorded by police surveillance equipment that had been installed in one of the getaway cars, openly discussing the robbery, arguing about how to divide the proceeds, and even talking about which pubs they planned to celebrate in. The surveillance recordings were devastating. Police heard them bragging about the heist, arguing about money, and planning how to dispose of the stolen goods. One famously complained that his back hurt from drilling. Another discussed his diabetes medication. They sounded exactly like what they were, elderly criminals completely out of touch with modern law enforcement capabilities. The arrests began in May 2015, just weeks after the heist. One by one, the elderly gang members were rounded up. Brian Rita was arrested at his modest home. Terry Perkins was taken into custody. John Collins was captured. The police even found some of the stolen goods buried in cemeteries and hidden in relatives' homes, hiding spots that might have worked in 1975, but were quickly discovered with modern investigation techniques. The trials became a media sensation. The Bad Grandpa Gang captured public imagination, a group of pensioners who had pulled off Britain's biggest burglary, but were caught because they didn't understand CCTV, cell phone tracking, and modern surveillance. Brian Rita received 6 years, but was released after serving half. Terry Perkins died in prison in 2018 at age 69. The others received sentences ranging from 6 to 7 years. For men in their late 60s and 70s, these were essentially life sentences. Only about 4 million pounds of the 14 million stolen was ever recovered. The rest remains missing, likely hidden or already sold through underground networks that these old criminals had cultivated over decades. The Hatton Garden heist became a cultural phenomenon. Books were written. Movies were made. The story of elderly criminals pulling off one last score resonated with the public in ways that ordinary heist stories do. If you're still watching, you need to subscribe right now. Hit that button, turn on notifications, and drop a comment telling me what you think happened to the missing 10 million pounds. I bring you incredible true crime stories every week. And next week, I'm covering the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist, $500 million in art stolen and never seen again. What amazed you most? That pensioners pulled off Britain's biggest burglary, that they took a break in the middle to rest, or that they got caught because they didn't understand modern technology? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Thanks for watching, and remember, criminal expertise means nothing if you don't understand the world has changed. See you in the next one.